Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all of you to this thematic track at the 25th Silver Jubilee edition of the World Sustainable Development Summit 2026, organized by the Energy and Resource Institute, TERI. Welcome to Taj Palace, New Delhi. My name is Ritika Singh, and I'll be your MC for this session. Before we begin, I would like to share a brief safety announcement. We are in Jehangir 1 Hall, located on the mezzanine level of the building. The hall has one entry and one exit door. There is no mock drill planned for today. All hotel associates are trained to handle emergencies. In case of an emergency, please remain calm and follow the instructions provided by the staff. Thank you for your attention and wish you a safe and productive session. I would now like to introduce you to our esteemed line of speakers and chair. The panel discussion will be chaired by Mr. Prashant Rajgopal, Deputy Inspector General of Forest, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Mr. Rajgopal is a 2006 batch officer of the Indian Forest Service and currently serves as Deputy Inspector General of Forest in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. In his present role, he oversees key national programs including the Green India Mission, the National Afforestation and Eco-Development Board, and the Desertification Cell, advancing India's forest and landscape restoration agenda. He is actively engaged in strengthening afforestation strategies, enhancing ecological resilience, and supporting India's climate change mitigation and land restoration commitments. With nearly 2 decades of experience across field and policy roles, he has served as Chief Wildlife Warden in Union Territories and held important assignments within MOEFCC and Ministry of Home Affairs, contributing to India's forest and climate change. Sir, may I request you to kindly take your seat on the dais? Can we have a round of applause for Mr. Prashant Rajgopal? Thank you, sir. Our next panelist for this session is Ms. Emma Wright, Regional Climate and Environment Advisor, FCDO, Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Ms. Wright is a Regional Climate and Environment Advisor at the British High Commission in New Delhi. She advises on climate action for Resilient Asia, which is the UK's flagship adaptation and resilience program for the Indo-Pacific region. She focuses on climate finance and regional hydrometeorological and early warning system work, and leads on the projects with Pacific countries and India with the bilateral climate team. Ma'am, may I request you to kindly be seated on the dais? Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker on the panel is Dr. Virginia Gorsevsky, Vice President, Nature-Based Solutions Conservation International. With nearly 3 decades of experience at the intersection of environment and development, she leads the Nature-Based Solutions team at the CSMO Center for Science and Solutions. She has previously worked with the US Environmental Protection Agency, US Agency for International Development, and most recently the Global Environment Facilities Scientific and Technical Advisory Panel on issues ranging from biodiversity, climate mitigation, and adaptation, and international water. Ma'am, please join us on the dais. Please. Thank you, ma'am. Our next panelist for the session is Ms. Saloni Goyal, Senior Director at the Coca-Cola Foundation. Ms. Goyal has a vast breadth of experience in policy, large-scale project management, and consultancy in sustainability, climate change, ESG, circular economy, and sanitation. She leads ESG value creation and sustainability initiatives across India and Southwest Asia, advancing circular economy, waste management, and water stewardship programs. She is an engineer from IIT Delhi and holds a master's degree from London School of Economics. With prior experience at Niti Aayog, UNDP, and Religare, she brings strong expertise in climate policy and sustainable development. Ma'am, kindly take your seat on the dais. Can we have a round of applause for Ms. Saloni Goyal? Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker in line is Mr. Sandeep Roy Chaudhary, co-founder and director, Value Network Ventures. With over 20 years in climate finance, he works at the intersection of carbon markets and adaptation. Under his leadership, VNV has mobilized high-integrity, community-driven climate action across 17+ countries, restoring millions of hectares and supporting millions of households. Sir, may I request you to kindly take your seat on the dais? We also have with us today Mr. Kundan Banwal, Senior Advisor, GIZ India. With over 18 years of experience in forestry, carbon markets, MRV, and climate mitigation, he leads initiatives on carbon market development and RED+ methodologies. He has also contributed significantly to environmental research and authored work on greenbelt development and air pollution abatement. Sir, may I request you to kindly take a seat on the dais. Lastly, I would like to introduce to the moderator for today's session, Dr. Jitendra V. Sharma, Senior Director, the Energy and Resources Institute. Dr. Sharma is a retired Indian Forest Service officer with more than 40 years of experience. He has worked extensively on forest governance, biodiversity conservation, climate finance, and international forest negotiations, including presenting India at the UN Forum on Forest. Sir, I request you to kindly take a seat on the dais. This landmark edition of WSDS is being held under the umbrella theme Transformations, Vision, Voices and Values for Sustainable Development. It is my privilege to welcome you to today's session titled Strategic Conservation Planning for Climate Resilient Landscapes in the Eastern Himalayas. This session is jointly curated by TERI in collaboration with Conservation International under the Mountain to Mangroves program, which is one of South Asia's largest reforestation and conservation initiatives, created as an urgent response to climate change and nature loss. This session seeks to align science, policy, and finance to unlock scalable, data-driven restoration and protection across the Eastern Himalayas. We are deeply grateful to all consortium partners and all collaborators whose support has made this thematic track possible. This WSDS 2026 session will begin with a presentation by Mr. Saurabh Malhotra, Managing Director, South Asia Conservation International, and Dr. Kashif Saad, Freshwater Science Director, Conservation International. Mr. Malhotra leads Conservation International's South Asia program and is a Louis Walton Fellow who co-designed the Mountain to Mangroves initiative. He also serves as Honorary Special Advisor to the Circular Bioeconomy Alliance and advancing nature-based solutions in economic development. He previously served as CEO of Balipara Foundation, advancing forest restoration with indigenous communities in Northeast India. He is a fellow of the Aspen Global Leadership Network, Acumen and Ashoka, and holds a master's degree from the University of Manchester. We welcome you, sir. Next we have Dr. Shad, who works at the intersection of freshwater science, informatics and governance. At Conservation International Science Division, he applies mathematical modeling, geospatial analysis, and data science to strengthen freshwater ecosystem protection, water security, and community resilience. His work focuses on ensuring the right information reaches decision makers at the right time to enable effective conservation action. We welcome you too, sir. And now I invite Mr. Malhotra and Dr. Shah to deliver their presentation and set the context for today's panel discussion. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. Very happy to co-host, I think, what is the first session of TERI's World Sustainable Development Summit. And I'm very honored to introduce Mountains to Mangroves to all of you, Conservation International's partnership with the people of the Eastern Himalayas. This initiative connects mountains, rivers, forests, and mangroves into one living interdependent system. It brings together leading organizations across India, Bhutan, Nepal, and Bangladesh to scale protection and restoration across an entire landscape, from the high Himalayas to the Bay of Bengal. And we begin with a very simple framing. We face an urgent problem. It's a problem of climate vulnerability, biodiversity loss, and water insecurity. All of these problems accelerating at a very, very scary pace. The Eastern Himalayas actually sit at the center of all of these interconnected crises. Our response to this is a bold solution, which is regional in scope, science-led in design, and partnership-driven in implementation. Critically, we are guided by a strategy for scale and not isolated projects, and a coordinated effort to transform landscapes across all of these various borders. The Eastern Himalayas are a landscape of profound global significance, spanning India, Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh, countries that altogether are home to 1 in 4 people on Earth. The glaciers of the world's tallest mountains feed the Ganges and the Brahmaputra. These rivers converge in Bangladesh to form the world's largest delta, stretching all the way to the Sundarbans, which are the world's largest mangrove forest, spanning between India and Bangladesh. The region contains a twelfth of the entire world's biodiversity. It stores over 600 million tons of irrecoverable carbon, and about 1 billion people depend on the natural resources of this region, water plus. And this is really not a peripheral landscape. It is globally consequential for climate stability, for water security, and for biodiversity. And yet, despite the importance of this landscape for biodiversity and for storing carbon, the region has been undervalued, as we all in this room know and probably can agree. While the urgency of protecting the Amazon or the Congo Basin is widely recognized, this region, where extraordinary biodiversity shares space with some of the most densely populated human habitats in the world, has not received comparable attention on the global stage. The combination of ecological richness, population density make it both vulnerable, but also very uniquely interesting and impactful. Together with our partners, we are building one of the region's largest restoration and protection efforts, and it is also time to bring the region on the global stage. Mountains to Mangroves is grounded in partnership. Our founding implementing partners, all of whom are actually in the room today, bring decades of experience in the landscape, very, very deep community relationships, and long-standing leadership in conservation. This is not a top-down initiative. It is rooted in local knowledge and community trust, which is only further strengthened through regional collaboration. And our work is guided by 4 interconnected pillars. I'm sorry my slides aren't working, but I think you can just hear me and that'll be okay. So our work is guided by 4 main pillars. These pillars are, first, climate resilience, to protect some of the world's most climate vulnerable communities. Second is to enable thriving communities, which is to generate livelihoods, education, and economic opportunity, especially for youth and women. Third is to secure water for all, is to preserve and strengthen water systems in the most populated region on the planet. And fourth is to preserve ecosystem biodiversity, restoring habitat to protect species in the world's great cradles for life. These goals actually reinforce one another. There is systems change and not a single issue intervention. Conservation International started working with partners in about 2022. Many of you remember Mountains to Mangroves as an idea, as a dream. But what became immediately clear to all of us, and I've worked in the region for decades now, is the depth of expertise that was already existing, right? And the opportunity to scale already proven solutions that are known to have impact on nature, and most importantly, on human beings. And our role was only to accelerate the sort of local leadership and impact work that already exists in the region. In short, our founding implementing partners implement, and CI simply enables scale. And what we focus our work on is around science, trying to ground decisions in data, communications, trying to bring the story of the Eastern Himalayas on the global platform, finance, and trying to mobilize philanthropy, but I think more consequentially, trying to create some of the region's first blended finance instruments to scale conservation work. And as a whole, partnerships and scale, because we are almost, I would say, completely obsessed by the idea of this urgent work that needs to happen with drastic scale in the region. And this combination of great partners, science-driven roots, will really enable us to scale this both with speed and with credibility. At the COP in Dubai, we launched the first rapid scaling portfolio. This rapid scaling portfolio was meant to be a proof of concept for this partnership, was not meant to prove that these projects work, but meant to prove that these partnerships work. We've raised about $12 million for the rapid scaling portfolio, and this portfolio is live. Once completely implemented, it's going to impact 70,000 hectares of land and about 170,000 people. But this is just the foundation. I think this portfolio really proves that regional collaboration work unlocks measurable impact. And before I close and hand over to Dr. Shad to actually talk to you about the crux of this day, I'd like to acknowledge, I think, key support from many of our partners present in the room. I think most importantly, all of our founding implementing partners, thank you. This initiative really stands on your decades of experience, and thank you for placing your trust in us. A very special thank you to TERI, also a founding implementing partner, for hosting us at this milestone World Sustainable Development Summit. To the Coca-Cola Foundation and to the S&P Global Foundation, thank you so much for believing in this vision when it was almost still a concept. And your very early catalytic support has really enabled all the work that you see and you hear about today, but also the momentum that we need to accelerate work. To the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, thank you for recognizing the importance of the Atlas, and thank you for supporting our science work. Your support has enabled everything that Kashif will talk today. And I'm very, very pleased to share also and to actually announce a brand new partnership with VNV Advisory. And this collaboration will focus us on allowing to scale restoration and unlocking ecosystems-based and blended finance mechanisms. And together, we aim to connect landscape scale ambition with the kind of capital that we need to deliver long-term and resilient impact across the region. Thank you, VNV. Thank you, Sandeep. Mountains to Mangroves really is more than a conservation plan. It is a regional movement that was based on trust, that is also based on science, that is based on partnership, and I think most importantly, based on a shared ambition that many of us share for the Eastern Himalayan region. I know so many people in this room who spend their lifetimes working on the region, and we really hope and thank you for your trust in this, in the program, and in the work that we are doing for the region. Thank you very much, and over to you, Kashif.
Thanks, Saurabh. Let's see if we can make this work. Okay, I'll just say next slide or next click. Yeah, thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here and jam-packed room. I'm sure you are here to listen to the esteemed opinions of and insights from our panel members. But I'll just set the stage by talking about something that Saurabh kind of ended on. There is an urgency to act in the region, but the ambition that Mountains to Mangrove is articulating is huge. I mean, for many of you who know this region, have worked in this region, 1 million hectares is massive. And Saurabh talked about we have 70,000 hectares worth of work in the process. How do we get from 70,000 hectares to 1 million hectares? So we need to do things large, but we need to do things fast. And we cannot hope for some magic to happen in the middle that we get to 1 million hectares. We have to look at it strategically. We want to do this in a way that benefits the people here. As Saurabh mentioned, Eastern Himalayas is a special place in the world with such vibrant biodiversity, such vibrant, colorful cultures, and some of the largest cities in the region. So we need to work for benefit of all. We need to create climate resilience in this region. We need to secure our water resources. We need to protect the biodiversity that we have and allow it to thrive without conflicts. And in all of this, create value for the communities who will continue to prosper in this landscape. So how do we do this? Can we do this? So we had two guiding questions. One is that as we start moving up in scale of the work, we need data intelligence to guide our strategy. We need to look at what we have, the excellent work and the science that has been done in this region, and connect it to how we continue to build programs that will take us towards that 1 million scale. And the second part is, it's quite clear that even with our amazing founding partners and all the work on the ground, if it's just this group, we will never reach 1 million hectares. We need to engage a growing number of people, especially communities, to become inspired by this work, to become familiar with what is happening. So how do we continuously expand this network of collaboration and actually share the geospatial insights does not remain limited to the scientists and to the carbon developers and to the freshwater scientists, and actually is used and understood in ways by everybody. So the way we designed this is we created, next slide please. We created this process, which is a 3-stage process, which is enabled by the Mountains to Mangrove Atlas. the first stage is assessing potential. This is really the biophysical potential on where ecosystem restoration work can happen in this region. It is driven by variables such as critical forest ecosystems that support spring sheds, or where are the biodiversity sub-hotspots in this region, and where are the iconic species, where is the wildlife conflict in here, where are the communities that most rely on the natural resources in the region, and how, in what ways. Okay, I'll try. Um, so what that's kind of the curated maps, and many of you are actually have some of this information, and we are trying to use what we can get, create some from global data sets, but actually eventually regionalize it and sub-regionalize it so that we can use more and more data from the ground to get there. Once we kind of have an understanding of where the priorities within Eastern Himalayas rise, where we can do the maximum good, when we connect that to a finance and policy instrument through these consultations, that becomes an opportunity. So the potential becomes an opportunity when we can actually do the work on the ground. And as that work opportunity is realized, we move that into the bucket of implementation. So we track implementations where the work is happening, including the 70,000 hectares that is in the pipeline, but also then connect learnings from each area to each area. We are very distinct ecosystems within the Eastern Himalayas, but there are commonalities that run through that we can learn from each other. So the tool does this. It's trying to balance two things. It wants to provide technical information, but it wants to open it up to a wide variety of people. The first part of this is actually the storytelling of the community. So what we are trying to do, and we hopefully will be able to launch it for public use within a few weeks, is that there is a three-dimensional landscape that actually brings us to the Eastern Himalayas, where a lot of the work from the community will actually live. So they can go and explore this region, look at the biodiversity there, and actually learn about the importance of Eastern Himalaya, but also hear the story of communities who are actually doing the work and implementation on the ground there. The second component, which is the more technical-driven component, is those large maps, which will also live in this tool, where you can actually see what different interventions potential lie in different parts of the region. And kind of built on this would be a way to track where implementation is happening at the moment, so we can actually go see at the live projects and how they are shaping up and progressing in the landscape. So kind of bringing in this community aspect of us contributing to the betterment of the region. The exciting bits happen. So you have the maps, you have the regional maps, and it kind of gives you a sense of the purpose, a sense of direction that you want to grow in. But I think the exciting things happens when we start moving from those regional maps to sub-regions. And one of the first places where we applied this process going down to the sub-region was in Bhutan for a project we call Restore Bhutan, which was just launched in November of 2025, where our regional maps were refined by the local data, which was actually by the Royal Government of Bhutan, starting to identify where is the potential for restoration in their landscape because of the lands that are degraded, which are impacted by fire, which kind of species need to come in to eventually build fire resilience in this landscape. And then their priority layers are based on other factors that are important to them, linked to our overall goals. Like Bhutan has mapped out the critical spring sheds that are critical for their water security, because majority of the community directly relies on the springs in the mountains rather than on the rivers downstream for their water source. So how does the restoration activity intersect with that? Where are the critical fire resilient areas that they need to think about for the long-term benefit of the community? So based on this, a first track of 50,000 hectares have been identified within Bhutan that is in need of restoration. And now the even more local level of mapping is kicking off, where we are looking at which are the first 5,000 hectares within this landscape where our partners from Bhutan can work with the Royal Government of Bhutan to actually realize those, while CI comes in to kind of design the blended finance instrument that can possibly shape that. And we are hoping that this process will play out in different ways with different actors within this region, so we can come up with maybe like the priority 10 geographies within Eastern Himalayas, where together we can make the maximum impact and measurably move us towards the 1 million hectare goal. And I think talking about those finance and policy instrument is a very tough problem, and I'm going to hand it over to our panel to guide us on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malhotra and Dr. Shah, for this informative presentation and setting the context for today's discussion. As we proceed towards panel discussion, I request Dr. Sharma to kindly deliver the welcome address and take the session forward. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Ritika. Strategic conservation planning for climate resilient landscape in the Eastern Himalayas. Now we are not confined to the Eastern Himalayas, but we have to confine towards the all Hindu Kush region. But if I consider the northeastern Himalayas in India, there is a significant loss of the forest cover, around 327 square kilometers from 2021 to 23. There is a need to concentrate and focus on the restoration and the conservation aspect. And the loss is in forest cover contributing to 178 and 125 square kilometers respectively in the state of Mizoram and the Nagaland. The loss in forest cover in northeast is particularly due to the various drivers such as unsustainable forest resources extraction, low development opportunities, and unsustainable jhum cultivation. Considering the northeastern India encompasses the part of the Indo-Burma and Eastern Himalayas biodiversity hotspots, 2 out of 36 globally recognized hotspots. Restoration and conservation initiatives are essential to preserve this trend. And TERI's work towards the mountain to mangrove plays a vital role in the mitigating these drivers of the degradation and increasing the tree cover through community-led agroforestry, afforestation and conservation initiative across 18,000 hectares, while also considering additional revenue model in the form of the voluntary carbon market to provide sustainable and equitable benefit for the local beneficiaries. And I like to inform the gathering that we are implementing 5 carbon finance projects in the state, in northeastern India, and we are going to initiate 5 projects are in the state of Assam, and we are going to initiate one very key project in the state of Manipur also. And we are also thinking to take conservation areas like Kaziranga and the Manas on priority for the carbon finance project. Of course, at present the methodology is on hold by Vera, but there are many other international global standards where they have kept open the methodology for the degradation module, so that we will be trying to catch that kind of the methodology and try to give the benefits to the communities who are involving in the conservation and protection of those PAs. Restoration effort by TERI focus on assisted natural regeneration and tree plantation in the northeastern India, particularly targeting degraded forest, non-forest and jhum fallows land in Assam and Nagaland respectively for reforestation, afforestation to enhance the state forest cover. And I like to also mention here that we have written a book on the different aspect of the jhum cultivation, and if jhum is implemented on a sustainable basis, means longer rotation, that it is beneficial for the enhancing the carbon sequestration than the mature forest. And if unsustainable, definitely it is deteriorating and the climate and also the defeating the conservation and afforestation approaches. Simultaneously, forest protection and conservation in Nagaland are advanced via a dedicated REDD Plus project, which directly tackle key for driver of the degradation such as unsustainable forest resource extraction and the jhum cultivation. It is critical to recognize that I mentioned that jhum, when practiced sustainably, definitely with a longer rotation is not inherently detrimental, rather it sustains livelihood for forest dependent communities and can achieve superior carbon sequestration over a long term as compared to the mature forest. There is multifold approach thus balances these dynamics, addresses deforestation and forest degradation, promoting improved land management practices and tree plantation. And looking ahead, TERI envision a long-term integrated community-based landscape approach where protection, sustainable land management, and restoration coverage to deliver an ecosystem-based model for resilient landscape. And here, I like to share with you all. Yesterday we were discussing with VNV. Is our very big partner for the implementing carbon forest project for the forestry and agroforestry sector. So that we were discussing and analyzing it. In one of the project, we are thinking to get issued the carbon credits. It is with the ANR and ARR project of the Assam Forest Department by the end of this year or the early 27 of January or February, not beyond that. So that we are focusing and we have matured our expertise and capacity of our regional offices also. They are more conversant how to take the areas, and they are more conversant about the different methodologies of the different global standards of the carbon finance market. So with these words, I stop here and I request Mr. Prashant Rajgopal, Deputy Inspector General of Forest, Ministry of Climate, Environment and Forest and Climate Change, Government of India, to give his opening remarks for this panel discussion.
Good morning to everybody, and it's a very distinguished gathering, some familiar faces and many not so, but which we'll get to know by the end of the day. And so I bring the ministry's perspective to this discussion. The theme itself is very, I'm particularly having worked in the sector at least now for the last 2 years in the ministry proper, find that very little focus usually goes on to the northeast and the eastern Himalayas. And it's wonderful that we are starting off this gathering with focus on this sector, on this area rather. It is for India a very critical part of the country, and also in terms of everything, political, geopolitical connections, the biodiversity, everything. So it becomes very significant that we are talking on this, and really wonderful that we're going there. Now, primarily the Eastern Himalayas, we are having, like many of the speakers already mentioned and which will come up in the discussions, what are the risks and what are the vulnerabilities that we have? Significant areas under climate risks, biodiversity loss, land degradation. Then the cultivation practices are already cultural practices which we do not necessarily need to sort of do away with it. How do we make it more sustainable? So these are challenges that we face in the field, and once we are looking at all of this, now the ministry is also largely seized on what is happening. We understand that it is not going to be usually run-of-the-mill programs that are going to make transformational changes in not only this region but pan-India. And so therefore the ministry is already reflecting on evolving policy frameworks, as we see, as in during the course of this particular summit itself. You would find there will be a lot of interactions with people coming in from the ministry. We've now, there's this general understanding that everybody sort of needs to work together. Silos that have to be, there's much that you can do in policy, but there's so much that people who are not so-called bound by the restrictions on what the government places and what you can do. Whereas you guys can go out and have a freer mind, think innovative ideas, bring things to the table. It's then up to us how we bring it into the policy and set it in motion. So given all of those contexts, the whole idea to bring mountains to mangroves itself is a very, normally it's usually either restricted to mountains or then mangroves per se. We don't usually do that connect. This is a very wonderful sort of stringing that you've done of, coming all the way from the glaciers and down to the Sundarban. So although we are not working on the India side right now, yesterday I had discussions with certain people. But putting that in context, I hope over the next hour or so we would be able to, thrash out bring out all the ideas possible, take it all this back, and then sort of how do we go forward with this? yes, there are so many, someone's going to speak on carbon, someone's going to speak on restoration measures. All of these things are happening. Even within the ministry, we have several projects. Personally, I have at least Kundan who's with us. We have a recap for NDC project, which is specifically at least in the Aravallis here, and we have 4 other districts, of which, 4 other states, of which one is a Himalayan state, but not a Eastern Himalayan state. So I think over the next, I'm just generally setting the context. I think a lot of the background has already been placed by 2 speakers before me, and I think we'll have very fruitful discussions. And I hope to take, my takeaway from this would be to understand what's not happening. I mean, what are the new ideas that I can take from this room? What can I put into papers that I put up into the system? What can, what's the latest things that's happening in the field? What are the sort of technologies, and what is the sort of know-how that we can share? So that would be my takeaway. So with that, I think we'll now then get down to brass tacks and then sort it out, right? Thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much, Prashant, for your views. And now I request Ms. Virginia, how can regional partners use scientific spatial tools such as mangrove to mountain atlas to design the restoration and conservation projects that are attractive for the investment? Please, Ms. Virginia.
Thank you so much. Is this working? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here and to be invited to this panel today. As was mentioned earlier, I work for Conservation International. I work for our science center based in the United States. So I'm certainly not an expert on the Eastern Himalayas, and I'm learning from all of you. And so to answer that question, I think what I'd like to do is maybe take a step back before we dive in and talk a little bit about the global perspective, having worked on global programs, not just at CI, but in my previous work, and take that question and maybe break it down into 2 pieces. One is just a little bit about working regionally, and then I'll say something about the role of science and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. So Conservation International, many of you may or may not know, we work, I think, in 87 countries. And we do work with governments on projects on the ground directly. But we do also work regionally in other areas. For example, the Amazon Basin. We work in Southern Africa with herding communities. And so we have some experience working regionally. And I think with that, there are challenges, but I think there are many, many benefits. And that's what I want to talk about today as we launch the Mountains to Mangroves partnership. It's very relevant. And I guess there's just a couple of points, and some of these will be obvious, but I'll say them anyway. And of course, the most important reason for working across boundaries and regionally is because that's how nature works. It's not wildlife and biodiversity and atmosphere is not confined to a single country. So, yes, of course, the action happens on the ground, but by avoiding a fragmented approach, I think you can reap multiple benefits. So that's, I think, the most important from a science point of view, especially. The other, related to that, of course, we've talked about, and I won't say all the statistics, but of course, talking about climate impacts. We've mentioned that the Himalayas, the Eastern Himalayas, are going to be seeing, or are already seeing impacts on an accelerated scale. And so, again, while the impacts are felt locally, they're felt nationally, I think there's a lot that can be learned across regions, and the things we do in one area will affect another. So that's another important reason for working regionally. And we've talked a lot about scaling, and so that's a favorite thing to talk about. I think, again, in this program in particular, the real action is on the ground in the various countries. But the role of CI and the role is more the glue. How do we bring all this together so that the sum is greater than the whole of the parts? And that's a real benefit to nature, to people, is the role of scaling so that we have a greater impact. And then I think one of the most important things, and this is touched upon in Kashif's presentation and elsewhere, that's often most ignored and most sort of, how can I say, in my experience, sort of taken for granted, is this role of knowledge sharing and learning. Enough can't be said about this. I'll just give an anecdote. A couple of days ago, I had the privilege of going to the Panbu forest in the Eastern Himalayas. It was absolutely amazing. and with ATREE and Dr. Nakul, I don't know if he's here, and in the space of 5 hours that I was there, going to various restoration sites, I learned so much about which species to plant, how, what are the incentives for communities. We met with the communities, how the trees are spaced, where they're sourced. I mean, just an amazing amount of information about the actions themselves, which I'm not going to say it's wasted on me, because it was actually very interesting. But I think the real benefit is the fact that Mountains to Mangroves works with 4, amazing partners, maybe more, but I think mainly 4. And so sharing this information and knowledge across the region with these partners is so critical, because we don't want to keep reinventing the wheel and learning the same challenges. There's so many things that I think bring people together. And so to me, I think the atlas is the beginning. I think that's can be a very important role with the storytelling and other functions. And so just one quick word then on the second part of the question about science, the role of science. Of course, I come from the Moore Center for Science, so that's very important. I think one thing, again, that kind of goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, is that science is not about Conservation International coming in and saying, this is how you should do it, this is how you should plant trees. Of course, we're happy to provide technical assistance. But really, it's coming from people on the ground, and the indigenous knowledge and the knowledge from people, and bringing that together and incorporating it into the atlas, as Kashif was talking about. So, for example, we're not going to tell the Indian Department of Forestry about community-based forestry, since they basically wrote the book on that. So that's very, again, goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway because I think it's very important. And I think science can be a great way to enhance cooperation. Scientists are nerds. We're complete nerds. We like to talk about data and whatnot. And so I think it's a really important way to enhance cooperation across these countries and within the region. So in conclusion, I'll just say that I'm very excited about this program, and I'm really excited to hear from the experts on how to make all this happen. I think the Eastern Himalayas is an amazing place, and we really can't afford to neglect it. So I'm really glad that this is happening. Thank you.
Ms. Virginia, and you have focused on how the people on ground are involved in the conservation aspect. Conservation is not only the scientific, it is the people and the social also. And is well reflected in the National Forest Policy of the country, India, 1988, that social aspect is very key and important, and the ecological is a prime objective, and commercial aspect is subordinate to these first 2 objectives. So that this is very much, and particularly in northeastern India, government-owned forests are very little. Largely, the community-owned forest and the village council-owned forest. So that forestry is in the blood of the community and the people on ground, in particularly northeastern India. Thank you so much. You have highlighted this particular factor. So now I am going to Ms. Emma Wright. What type of the innovative financing approaches can generate steady long-term investment for landscape restoration, and how can we utilize these funds? Please, Emma Wright. Yes, please.
Namaskar, everybody. Can you hear me? Great. Hi, thank you so much for having us here today. I'm Emma. I'm representing the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office today. Out of the British High Commission in New Delhi, we've been working with Conservation International and with TERI and others, so thanks very much to everyone for hosting us today. What a question. I think if we could fix that, we could fix everything. So I've got it here. Exactly, so no pressure. Well, it's a great question, so we're all here to try and answer that, so that's fine. I actually work on a program called CARA, which is a huge adaptation and resilience program. It's the UK's flagship one. It covers South Asia, Southeast Asia and the Pacific. So we're working really on sort of transboundary and regional issues in the region, this South Asia, Southeast Asia and Pacific region, so a very large region, very diverse region. And so we have this program. I spend a lot of my time advising on it. Within this program, we've actually only just started doing specific work on the Eastern Himalayas, so thanks to Conservation International, therefore, allowing us to collaborate on the Atlas, which I think is brilliant. But what we do, quite interestingly, is quite a lot of work in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. So I don't know if there's anyone here from ISIMOD this morning. Good morning, good morning. So after the session, and I don't answer your question, ask this lady here. She will. So under the CARA program, we work with ISIMOD, which is the International Centre for Integrated Mountain Development, to deliver certain projects. And we also work with the Asian Development Bank. We have a trust fund with them called the Community Resilience Partnership Program. So that's also funding some work in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. And whilst obviously the Eastern Himalaya is a totally unique context and landscape, there are some similarities with the rest of the Himalaya. So we think that there's opportunity for really good cross-learning between the two here. And so I won't go into detail about every type of blended finance, market-linked, or innovative financing mechanisms for sustained investment in the Eastern Himalaya, but I will talk about a couple of main examples here. So I think, so with ISIMOD, we have this project that they are leading, which is called the Hindu Kush Himalaya Innovation Challenge, so it's HKA's ICE, which is why I need the notes because I can't remember the acronyms. And so this is a great new type of innovation challenge fund. So this is about fostering and linking entrepreneurs to other sources of finance. So, for example, the first round alone supported 12 mountain-based climate enterprises and is said to have mobilised up to about $1 million US already, just from the first round, and that's in private investment. So we're still verifying the exact numbers as part of our annual review process, but it's really evident that those enterprises have already earned additional funding, additional interest, new partnerships, and so there's opportunities to scale there. So, for example, just some quick examples that I can send more information on any of these to anyone later if you're interested. There's one called Kumaon Kand in India, which has mobilised 60,000 US in investment. So that's working with angel funds. They've hired a co-founder, and they're really working on strengthening the hemp value chain model there. So there's one called Mangala Herbaceuticals in Bhutan, which has secured about 500,000 US as a concessional loan, and planning. They're a cordyceps store. So cordyceps obviously have many different applications and could be a really great revenue stream for the area. And so there's also one called catalyse management in Nepal. So this is really about recycling in the Everest region. So what they're doing is they're collecting various different types of recyclables and then linking them up to other opportunities. So this is really working with very local waste entrepreneurs. So they've collected 5 tonnes already just as a pilot scheme. And they've actually got support from the Google product team for product design, for example, and that's for marketing and for their global partnership. So I think that's a really great example of taking people's local knowledge and people's local entrepreneurship and trying to link it into larger sources of finance over time. So that's just one part of the equation, really. As ISIMOD themselves have identified as the next step, it's necessary to then integrate the enterprise incubation with engagement and with government and with financial institutions and development organisations. So this will help the transition from the pilot to scaled adaptation finance. So I think I agree with everything everyone said so far, and I think what you were saying, Virginia, what you were saying, Doctor, about communities of practice and bringing people together, the collaboration angle right now could not be more important. As we all know, the sort of global financing and funding landscape is really under pressure. So the more that we can come together and collaborate and pool funds, the more we'll be able to act in the Eastern Himalaya. So I'll say that again. Another example, under our ADB Trust Fund, the Community Resilience Partnership Fund, we're working in Nepal and Indonesia, interestingly, and I do think that there are opportunities to learn between South Asia and Southeast Asia on climate finance, because there's a whole world of new innovative ways of thinking and acting that I think sometimes government, we can be behind the curve, so we want to make sure that we are in a community of practice that makes sure we are at the curve. So with this particular programme, it's working with community resilience funds. So in this particular example, the CRF funds were given directly to grassroots women's organisations. So this enabled testing of the locally led solutions by the affected communities themselves, and the lessons learned from these activities will be feeding into the design of large-scale programmes that the Asian Development Bank is financing, and they're developing those in both Nepal and Indonesia in tandem as well, so that's super interesting. But I think it's really important that these pilots are being tested at areas that are at high risk, like in the Eastern Himalaya, and that they're in underserved locations. And so that's how we will then also be able to support the government in scaling wider programs themselves. How much longer do I have? Okay. I could go on and on, I won't. So I think one of the other key things is establishing a national financing platform. And so this is where regional actors can also try and help take things from national to transboundary. So I think what you were saying before about transboundary and regional work being really, really important is also quite difficult in the Eastern Himalaya. There's a lot of different priorities and agendas. But that doesn't mean that we can't learn from each other. So I really, really emphasize that point. So in Nepal, there's something called the Green Resilient Financing Facility, or GREF, and this is explicitly focused on establishing a national financing platform which is capable of mobilising and coordinating multiple sources of climate finance for community-level adaptation. So again, bringing funds together and developing funds of funds, and having a sort of official national platform is great. I think as long as that national platform takes into account the subnational and local needs and works upwards, then you also have the opportunity for transboundary and regional aggregation as well. So the opportunity here is to also bring in domestic budgets. So we talk a lot about private finance, but public finance is going to be needed to unlock a lot of private finance in the short and medium term. And also domestic finance and from local government budgets is also really critical. So these kind of platforms and funds can bring together bilateral and multilateral partner contributions and the International Climate Fund. So enabling access to the GEF, the GCF, the Adaptation Fund, especially in the short and medium term, is really critical for getting things up to the next level. And so that's really important in the Eastern Himalaya, where if you have, as we were saying before, fragmented financing, you simply cannot achieve the scale or continuity needed. So there are obviously many other types of blended finance and market models, and I will leave it to CI to talk a little bit about some of those, and around carbon credits and biodiversity credits in particular, and how we need to be careful with those to make sure that they are creating the right incentives. But we also have, just as another example, bonds are obviously growing under our wider program in Thailand. We issued with the UNDP in 2024, Thailand became Asia's first issuer of a sustainability-linked sovereign bond. And so that's been independently verified by UNDP, so that's a really good tie-up between the government and UNDP there. But what they think they've unlocked at the moment is up to 900 million US so far for all these sustainability projects. So we definitely need to do more on bonds, and underpinning that is work on taxonomies and climate budget tagging. So I won't reiterate everyone else's points, and I'll just conclude by saying the things we need to do are use public funds wisely, focus on the data, so fantastic about the Mountains to Mangroves Atlas. I think that will help us unlock financing. Have clear enabling frameworks and governance. The more we do good governance, the easier these things will be to scale. Focus on pilots, have a risk appetite, and make sure that the communities are leading it. And then enable and scale up through aggregation of funds, and continue to learn from each other. So thank you so much for listening. Really great to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emma. And you have focused on the innovative financing mechanism. And what is the public finance? But the public finance is mainly used by the government sector. And I can request Mr. Prashant that how the public, the government departments, government sector can make use of the private finance, so that there is a need to develop the mechanism within the government. Right now, we have experienced while transferring money of the carbon credit to the Punjab Forest Department, they were not having any mechanism to accept the foreign currency. Likewise, so TERI has the FCR account, we have taken in our account, we have directly transferred to the accounts of the, so these kinds of the nitty-gritty has to be seen the government sector when the international finance, private finance, and we are looking for the private finance in particular, so that we have to see the kind of the changes in the government system also. So with these words, I request Ms. Saloni Goyal, Senior Director, the Coca-Cola Foundation, what are the major barriers to financing restoration and conservation on a scale, and how can governments, donor and private sector work together to overcome them. And one of the bottlenecks I have just mentioned, and I request Ms. Saloni Goyal to can you be brief and express your views. Thank you so much. Okay. Yes.
So thank you, Conservation International, Saurav Kashif, and of course TERI, our implementation partners for this Mountain to Mangrove program in Assam and Nagaland, for inviting me as a representative of the Coca-Cola Foundation. This project, or I would say, I think project would be a small word for this. This program is transformative, and it works in a ecosystem which is, we understand, is highly climate vulnerable, because it is fed by the Himalayan glaciers, which, while being huge in size, I think large, second only to Greenland and Antarctica, but at the same time highly climate vulnerable. So, and we are very happy to be here, and as one of the catalytic finance funding partners for this project. So I'd really like to take this question from the point of view that really why we got excited about being part of this work. Of course, much of the credit goes to Conservation International. Sort of, you made a compelling case before us, and I think your case really rested on 3 pillars that resonated and aligned with the Coca-Cola Foundation. So the first pillar is is that we've identified 4 river basins in this region that we want to prioritize for support. The Ganges and the Brahmaputra basin being one of the 4 identified priority basins. The approach that you're taking out here about an integrated watershed management, river basin approach, and a science-based solution is the direction that we're taking across our water stewardship projects and restoration projects that we support. The second pillar is that we as a foundation are committed to water conservation, water restoration. We are committed as a part of our water stewardship, I would say, vision and commitment. We are committed to giving back at least 100% of the water that we use back to communities and back to the nature. We do it through water restoration projects across our geographies, I'd say. We have multiple projects, and what is interesting is, and the way we see we can, how should I say it, ensure a kind of an exit or sustenance of the projects, long-term sustainability, is that we work closely with communities, aligned with their interests, but we also work closely with the local governments to ensure that not only unlocking some additional finance from government grants, government projects, but also to ensure that the initiative in some senses align with the local government priorities as well. We've seen that as a very powerful model for implementation and also exit. We also work on sustainable agriculture. We're doing it across geographies in this region, and there we are achieving water conservation through a water avoidance lens. And this we are doing by encouraging and creating capacities amongst farming communities for adopting more efficiency in use of water in agriculture. We understand agriculture is the highest guzzler of water. And again, in these projects, we've seen that we've been able to unlock multiple times government finance. So government finance is available as in the form of projects, grants, subsidies, and often communities are unable to tap these resources simply because either they have limited knowledge about it or they're not able to really close the gaps to get to that finance. So we see that our intervention or our support is hugely catalyzing in that way. Of course, working on river basins approach, as I said, which directly maps onto the Mountains to Mangroves project, is another area where we work on water. I would say the third area, and which is particularly exciting for us, and as Emma and both Virginia alluded to it, that how can we, as foundations, really play a catalytic role. And I think that the Mountains to Mangrove project, the initial collaborative vision, which was there right at the design stage itself, was particularly exciting for us. We are happy to have played the role of one of the founding catalytic finance funding supporters, and I know that the Conservation International has raised multiple times the finance for this. We see that this is a powerful way of scaling this project. I'm happy to hear about all the blending finance opportunities that can be mobilized through this, and also particularly, I would say the quality carbon credits that now this project is focusing on targeting. I see that again as a very powerful tool going forward, because that creates a revenue stream for communities that will own these credits, and it creates a steady revenue stream for them for over 30 years, which means that we get, if you're able to communicate this benefit to them right up front, we are able to get greater buy-in from them, more active participation from them, but we're also able to ensure their sustained participation over a long duration. So I think all these three elements, we at the foundation see as really powerful things that have come together in the design of this and development and rollout of this project. So thank you so much, Conservation International, for bringing us on board. Thank you, TERI, as a very, active and effective implementation partner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And, of course, finance is very key and important aspect, and I also mentioned that we have to resolve the ways and out how we can reach it to the community, and the benefits to be transferred to the community in a transparent manner. So now I request Mr. Sandeep Roy, co-founder and director Value Network Venture, what role can carbon and emerging nature market plays in scaling restoration while ensuring environmental integrity and community benefits. Here I also like to mention that VNV is not transacting the carbon credits only, but also helping the communities for livelihood aspect, looking after the livelihood aspect of the communities in the carbon finance project. So with these words, over to Sandeep.
Thank you, sir. And really, I mean, I think that I see a lot of familiar faces here, and it's really good to be here. And thank you for Conservation International, especially Saurav, Irina, you guys. I think the partnership is something we really look forward to, and it's really close to my heart, if I may say so. For those who don't know, I was born and brought up in Shillong in Meghalaya, and I spent the first 18 years of my life in the Northeast. A lot part of my family moved from Bangladesh, and we also had family all the way across Bhutan and Arunachal. So these are landscapes that was widely traveled while I was a child. So when this kind of initiative comes on, it's something that is just not work for me. I think it's quite personal. So yes, and carrying on from there, I think, and I think Saloni mentioned that, I mean, our job is to get carbon finance into these projects. Now, why is carbon finance important? There is catalytic fund needed for ecosystem restoration, but there is fund needed for continuity of that restoration. Programs cannot end after 5 years, 10 years when you're talking about ecosystems. You're talking about 20 years, 30 years, and you're talking about intergenerational change. Somebody who's a 9-year-old right now, in 20 years will be 29 years old and probably a steward of that same ecosystem that you're trying to preserve right now. And how do you keep the incentives continually going on within that restoration piece is quite crucial, if not the most important part. We can do what we can do, all of these restorations that we're doing, are they going to be there 15 years down the line is what we should worry about now. And that's where I think a lot of our work could come in handy. I mean, it's something that we would really try and make it happen. We would possibly try to be the glue between all of the different programs, because at the end of the day, and this is something we've struggled with in VNV, we've been around for 15 years, but we haven't been able to crack the landscape approach. People keep talking about it, but we still don't know how to do it. And for me, this idea actually, because of all these different players coming together, becomes that landscape, and finally we probably will have that landscape level of approach. And if we ever needed a landscape approach in this country, I think Eastern Himalayas is definitely one of them, given the amount of impact that it has. And having said that, I think what we intend to do, and this is something we will obviously, and we're really looking forward to working with all the partners in the future, is to strengthen the community stewardship part. And that's where science also comes in, actually, in a lot way. Data will enable finance. There is no finance without data. Let's be very clear about it. So we need science. We need science both on the data in terms of restoration. We need social sciences as well. We kind of talk about social impact in a very airy-fairy manner. We should not. That's a science. So we should not go away from the science part of it, because the science is what will enable more finance to come in. Let's be very clear again. I mean, if I'm repeating myself now. But having said that, I think this is important. What I think, and this is something we aim to do a lot. Dr. Karki is here from Nepal. We've been talking about community forestry in Nepal for almost 5 years now, in terms of how to make that work. What I envision is all of these. Nepal has something called CFUGs, Nagaland has something called conserved areas, CCAs, Meghalaya has something called Sinjuks. We have a lot of community forest stewardship. How do we strengthen that? The governance systems around that, the financial systems around that, the credit worthiness, livelihoods, we can work all we want, but if there's no community stewardship, it will not happen. So instead of ecosystems and talking about, we talk a lot about forest cover. I think for us, it becomes about the quality of the forest is more important than the forest cover. And if we can somehow make community engagement and community forest areas, community governed areas as part of this entire program, that's the only way this will sustain for 30 years. There is no other way we can put in all the money that we want. So for me, financing is just one part of the problem. Yes, it's a big problem, and I agree. But getting into the weeds of the sustainability of the project, and I know we overuse sustainability, I know we do that, but that means ecosystem creation. That doesn't mean only direct cash benefits. I work in carbon credits. Of course, the first thing that we are always told is it transparent enough? So I believe that as long as you are transparent on financial matters, you're okay on carbon credits, and we have to be. But that money is not going to solve this problem. How do we build that ecosystem? And I'm particularly interested in public financed infrastructure Infrastructure that is already existing can be used. Warehousing for livelihood projects, amazing. You have to use them. Banking systems, credit, microfinance systems, how do they all interact with each other and on interest rates that actually work for communities? So it is a larger piece. It needs larger thinking. This is not about pilots and bringing them all together. I don't think that's how this will work. But yes, I think everybody in this room has more experience than me on this, but we would really love to work with you guys on kind of understanding, again, the quality of the ecosystem rather than just the quantity of the ecosystem. We really need to spend more time on that. And however carbon credits can help that, we are here. I mean, this is something we've been doing. This is an expertise area for us. And we believe in financial transparency. We would like to actually communicate to the whole world on how benefit sharing should work as a part of this program. And that's where I think landscape level, and just to end this entire thing, I'm quite excited to work on this M2M program, because some of our projects in Assam now, in Arunachal, in Nepal, in Bhutan, in Bangladesh, and we've been working in these countries forever, but all in these small pockets. How do we tie this to the jurisdictional level? This is extremely important to us, because our work otherwise will not survive. Whatever we did between 2010 and 2020 will not survive till 2040 unless there is a huge landscape jurisdictional approach that comes into this piece. That will make our work successful, make everybody else's work successful. So it's quite important that we all do this together. Thank you very much on that.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. And you have rightly mentioned that the science and the social science both are equally important for the carbon finance project in particular, because with our data and science, and on daily basis we keep on getting the messages from the different part of the country that I have planted 500 trees, I have planted 1,000 trees, and how can I get the carbon credit? So that here the role of the government is to make aware. Of course, CCTS scheme is there, so that awareness is also very, very important. And as far as finance is concerned, at present, particularly in the voluntary carbon market, the carbon credits are being sold mostly outside. Outside, the funds comes in form of the foreign currency, so that the kind of the mechanism country has to receive the foreign currencies, that is also very, very key and important. So we will be discussing during the question answer session. So before that, I request Mr. Kundan Banwal, Deputy Project Director and Senior Advisor, GIZ, how can international commitments on climate and biodiversity be translated into the practical landscape level implementation? And also, we are partner under the recap for NDC project with the GIG, so that we are also thinking the kind of the innovative financial mechanism through carbon financing in that also. Of course, other financing mechanism also. And so before going to the project, I would like to share with the gathering that we have to have first feasibility, whether the area is feasible for the carbon finance project or not, because the global standards, they have the different kind of the methodology, different kind of the requirements and parameters. So with these words, I request Kundan to go ahead with your views and
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kundan Banwal from GIZ, and I would like to thank TERI for inviting me to this interesting panel and congratulating TERI on this event 25 years. Yeah. So, getting back to the question, you said you mentioned three big frameworks. UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, which talks about scaling restoration globally. The Paris Agreement, which looks at climate change mitigation and adaptation, including NDCs and carbon sinks. And then you talked about GBF, which looks at biodiversity targets, primarily 30 by 30, ecological integrity and restoration. So all three frameworks actually talk about restoration in one way or the other. And translating these commitments into real landscape level restoration would require us moving from targets and declarations to institutions, finance, local ownership, and and community engagement. So I would refer to what Dr. Kashif said in the beginning, that implementation is going to be the key. It's amazing that you've come up with this mangrove, so mountains to mangrove atlas. But then, when you get down to the ground and start implementing, and restoration being an interdisciplinary topic where you have multiple stakeholders involved, how do you make it work? And how do you sustain it over a period of time? So having said that, I would also like to very quickly talk about the fact that the government of India has been implementing restoration at the landscape level through its structured missions and programs. And to mention one is the Green India Mission, which incorporates biodiversity conservation, ecosystem services, as well as community livelihoods. No? And then the fact that Campa has been able to make finances available for restoration of degraded landscapes, right? And also the convergence that we've been talking about for so long through Manrega and the now called Viksit Bharat, some Rozgar Ajivika Mission, some complicated name, yeah. So that convergence makes restoration and the community as livelihood security work together. So having said that, restoration is not an individual environmental intervention. No, it is a developmental pathway, and let's accept it like that. No, and advancing the same ideology, GIZ is implementing an Indo-German bilateral cooperation project called Restore, Conserve, and Protect Forest and Tree Cover for NDC implementation in India. It's a very long title. For a better recall value, we have a very nice acronym called RECAP for NDC. It's a project financed by the German Federal Ministry for the Environment through its International Climate Initiative, and it's a large consortium project led by GIZ. But I'm very happy to see 4 of the 6 organizations who are a part of this project program is in the room. We have IUCN India, TERI, FSI, ICFRE, that's the Indian Council for Forestry Research and Education, and ECMODE, that's International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. Now the project works across 5 pillars, one being implementation of model approaches on forest landscape restoration and trees outside forests in identified landscapes across 4 geographies, that's Gujarat, Maharashtra, Uttarakhand, and the Delhi NCR. And I'm happy that Prashantji already mentioned that let's look, Eastern Himalayas is, yes, of course, important, but let's look at the whole Hindu Kush Himalayas, and that's why, we could learn from each other, right? So that's one output. The other output is looking at integrated monitoring, evaluation, and reporting frameworks, which goes beyond carbon and biomass stock. For the longest period of time, we as a country have been talking about carbon and biomass stock. No one talks actively about ecosystem services, socioeconomic benefits that accrue as a result of forests. And this country, to be very honest, I'm very proud, is one of the top 10 countries in the world who's been able to maintain and manage their forests and has an increasing trend. Yeah? So let's talk about other benefits beyond carbon and biomass stock. So that's what the project will work on. The third is leveraging finance. Restoration is expensive affair. Yeah? Where is the money? How can we make other people join forces? Can we forge partnerships, look at public financing as well as private sector financing? And then output 4 is on policies and guidelines. We also need to work, it's a multi-pronged approach, right? When you're talking about restoration, you need to look at different elements of it. So we are working on integrating forest landscape restoration approaches into existing policies and guidelines and see how it can become a part of developmental planning processes across various levels. And last but not the least, capacity development, knowledge management, and communication. I'm very happy somebody said, Saurav, you said communication is extremely important, and yes, it is. Having said that, together with ECMODE, we've been working on OECMs, that's other effective area-based conservation measures, which goes beyond beyond the formal protected areas and looks into how conservation can become mainstream in community conserved areas or biodiversity-rich commons, and also working on ensuring that there is connectivity across these fragile ecosystems of the mountains, right? And how we can promote community-based conservation measures. Having said that, I will conclude by saying a couple of things. Restoration, there are 3 things, no? Restoration has to be landscape-based, and Sandeep, to your question, it's you've not been able to crack, neither have we, but we are trying. No? We are all trying, and I think there is enough and more that we can do together, and we need to forge partnerships, and I think Sandeep is the only one who has partnerships with everybody, including GIZ. Yeah, so we are seeing how we can partner with various other organizations to make this restoration work. So restoration has to be landscape-based, of course, locally contextual, right? Second is finance needs to be, convergent and outcome-oriented. And third, we've talked a lot about communities, and communities need not necessarily only be beneficiaries. They need to become partners in this entire discourse. Yeah. So I think we keep talking about them being beneficiaries. Why can't we just partner with them and say this is your thing, and let's do it like that. So these global commitments give direction. Government, through its structured programs and missions, gives structure, science gives credibility, and community gives sustainability. And I think these 4 things, together with sustained financing, can make restoration work and actionable on ground. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Kundan. And you have rightly mentioned that financing, and from every corner it is emerging that financing is very key and important aspect. And convergence you have mentioned, and I also give my experience on the conservation aspect. We have evaluated and done a study for the Uttarakhand for the how much money needed for the biodiversity conservation in Uttarakhand. It is coming out around 10,000 crore per INR per year. So that in many public sector, public finance schemes, money was available, but you are rightly mentioned that how to conserve for the particular sector development and conservation aspect. That is key and important. That is the main effort of the under the financing part of the recap for NDC project. That is key and important. And thank you all panelists. And no discussion is complete without question and answer from the gathering. And now floor is open for the question and answer. Please.
Sorry, Shailesh. My batchmate, so I can take this liberty. I am Alka Bhargav, currently working with the United Nations Environment Program. So, I mean, thanks for this great start to the day, in fact. So, the buzzwords which have been coming is conservation, development, sustainability, landscape. So, I'd just like to bring another concept into this conversation is what is known variously termed as true cost accounting, true value accounting, the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity. That's the project which I'm handling through UNEP. So, I mean, you said there's no finance without data. So this is where our project and this concept of TEEB, and TEEB for agri-food, which is being implemented in India, that becomes important. Because, I mean, the tagline is very, I love it, is making nature's values visible. If you take just agriculture, it's yields per hectare or productivity per capita, something like that. That's about all the community is known for, how much they have produced. But we are not attributing that value which nature gives us. Ecosystem services, we talk about it, but there is very limited valuation. So this framework is not just doing it the quality, the quantity, but also monetized value. USD, INR. So the projects which we are having in UP, Uttarakhand, Assam, now we're going to Sikkim also. So it touches the Himalayan belt as well as the Gangetic plains. So there, I mean, we've got really good results of how I mean, we're doing it on organic farming and agroforestry, scaling up these two, how it can have impact on the ecosystem services, etc. So we've actually calculated the amount of $1 million which can be saved if you have proper agroforestry and organic farming. You save it from construction of soil conservation structures, for example, water provisioning, etc. So that, I think, there is where we could probably chip in wherever needed in the Assam project. And that this was most heartening, Sarojini, when you talked about agriculture. Because you cannot have conservation if you don't have sustainable agriculture in that ecotone area especially. So that is my pitch as a forester and now as this. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Thank you so much for your suggestion. And we have now
Yes. The government, they have scheme, they introduced the scheme in the union budget 23-24, the MISTI, and the same, the data, what is the progress on that, where we are now. 23-24, it was implemented on 5th of June 23, so now 5th of June 26 is coming, what we have achieved. It is very important to understand. Point number two is we are talking about the carbon credit. The government will introduce the trading on carbon credit, CCTS, in October 2026. We know the value of the price of this carbon credit. That is very important. Then only we can implement in the other sectors. The government, they have identified 9 sectors. Out of 9, they have given a priority of 5 sectors at least. So the value of this carbon credit, what is the value of that? Is that be listed in the stock exchange?
No.
I agree. What will be the value of that? Yeah, what will be the value of that so that the other decarbonization? Thank you.
First Prashant, then Sandeep. All questions.
So it's a programmatic question. Yes, I'll be very precise. I'll take half a minute. So the question is, while there were outcomes in terms of increase in agricultural land, 1 million hectare, and then somebody talked about carbon credit and livelihood. What impacts were noticed in terms of water, like surface water, groundwater availability increase, given that area is also water related vulnerable?
So may I? So I'll be very brief. So the government has this national edible oil, plan, and the major area they're looking at is northeastern region with over 93,000 hectares as a target, and most of this is degraded land they're targeting. So how are we going to manage this?
Yes.
And 68,000 is already under cultivation in various Himalayan states, focusing on this.
Yeah, my name is Ramit Basu. I work with local government since last 2 decades, especially Panchayat Raj institutions. While the panelists were talking about communities, I was just hoping that somebody would mention about local governments. In the Northeast India and of course in the Himalayan region and in India as well as in Nepal, both the countries' local governments are constitutional bodies. And they have been mandated to carry out certain functions. Out of 29 functions, almost 10, 11 functions falls in the category of panchayats. So I think there is a lot of scope that while we all talk about engaging with the government, we somehow missing the bus of engaging with local government, because there's a lot of talk about localization of SDGs as well. And even SDG thematic area 4 and 5 directly talks about water rejuvenation and clean and green. So I think our strategy also need to be somewhere built around, working with local government. The National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan also focuses on working with local government committees and CBOs. And then there are funds also available there. It might not be big funds, but there are funds and grants as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, please. Only 2 questions.
Good afternoon. I am Bhaskar Kakoti. I am from Assam. So, being from Assam, I have one thing. See, we in Northeast in the threshold of development now. Assam, we are feeling that we need development now. There are investment summits are happening in Assam. So there is a fund coming for different types like cement industry and the infrastructure. At the same time, we need to preserve our biodiversity. For one example, Kaziranga you have mentioned. So in the month of December, there were 60,000 visitors to Kaziranga and 2,000 approximately visitors visited with 500 plus gypsy, Maruti gypsy runs on petrol. Okay, so that's a very important I am saying. So this type of, I request this panelists and all, so if you can close this also is a big thing for that. So do we really need your support on that? Thank you.
So thank you very much. My name is Sabir.
Time is limit.
30 seconds. My name is Sabir Masumi. I'm from Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. I used to be a conservationist. I'm still a conservationist. So I'm leading the water program. I used to work for World Wildlife Wetland Trust in Cambodia with WWF IUCN. So you honorable gentleman mentioned about new ideas. Water is there, financing and transboundary work. So what is necessary, and I think this should be a new way, is how we connect infrastructure, because conservation also needs infrastructure. Infrastructure needs conservation, So both of them needs to be seen in the picture of conservation for the new wave of successful work with communities and also with the financing sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question. Yes, please. उनका है पीछे पीछे से आप सब डिस्कस कर लेते सर please. Then we have to answer also. Yeah. Yes, you are audible. Go ahead.
This is just a compliment to what Mr. Chaudhary has said. That the work requires a lot of social studies. I'm from a science background and I'm from Manipur. The issue is many of the approaches that you have experienced might be quite unworkable and useless when you go to a community which is full of infinite diversity. Yes. For example, I might be eating an insect, but another community might be praying and doing a ritual practice to eliminate and this particular insect is no
And Sandeep, to reply regarding the carbon credit and pricing and so on. Yes.
So, with your question regarding Mishti, sir, I'd be glad if I can get your email at this. I'll give you a complete, because it's more like a parliament question. What is it? How much are we? Sort of, so I'll give you a complete details. But we started off with, like you said, so it was an initial budget announcement. We started off with an initial corpus of 100 crores. We spent already more than that in out of the 13 so-called coastal states that we have, except for Lakshadweep, which is about 5 odd hectares of mangroves. All the other states on board, but then largely we funded only 5 states and 1 UT, so it's 6 of them. Some of the larger states, like particularly like if you look at Tamil Nadu, doing excellent work, but they said that we don't want to tap into those funds. It's their call. So, but we have, as per the initial cabinet note that gone through, we have sort of 850 crores that we can, sort of fund. So the activities that we are looking for, because this was, it was initially envisaged more as a gap filling project. There was an already existing project within the government of India on sustainable coastal mission, which is largely handling mangroves, but this was then gap filling. So given that, sort of a reduced mandate of being a gap filling program, the number of works that you take up are also less. So we have core activities is largely restoration of mangroves. Then in we also have other activities which are allied activities, being more related to awareness creation and livelihood. So it's largely on the state and the landscape and the kind of area that they want to take up. But I would be happy to give you the entire details of this. But it's doing, that is one of those projects. We've largely met our targets of what we have been, in fact, little more than. And again, like the word that we use was convergence. So many of the states are reporting data under MISTI, but not taking funds under MISTI. So in that sense, we're sort of having mangroves restored, but not necessarily having to fund it from government of, from Kampa, right? So thank you.
As far as pricing of the carbon credit is concerned, it depends on the integrity and the quality of the project. And it is not, many people see on the Google and this is the rate, this is not like this. The experts have transacted. The experts sitting here, whatever I have learned from him. And
No, we can take this offline, sir, but it's a long-winded answer. But it depends on the credit. It's mostly bilateral right now. I wish there was a world where we could see a price on an exchange. We don't have that yet. I think that world will come, but it's not now. Maybe around 5-6 years later. We're not holding our breath to sell all of these carbon credits under the India CCTS, because we believe that market will still need to really evolve and mature before we start selling carbon credits domestically. I think as of now, the market is mostly international, zero other climate targets of corporates. I think there is no expert on carbon pricing, by the way, in the world right now. It is what you sell and who's willing to pay the price, and that's it. So that's all there is to it. It's not something that is very organized. I wish it was, but that's the case right now.
And you have rightly mentioned that social fabric is very important, and science and social science both are. And as you see, the definition of there is no definition exists globally on sustainable development of forest, because every country, that is why United Nations has not agreed only on a single definition. Our forestry is top is ecology, then followed by social, then commercial. Or maybe in Canada and other countries, commercial is top and ecology is after that. So like every country is defining forest and social aspect of the fabric accordingly. So that is very important, and we see the national forest policy also, the social aspect, sustenance need of the livelihood of the people who are living in and around forest is the first charge. And Forest Right Act 2006 is a kind of the legislation in the country. And I request you, if you can speak on the water conservation aspect.
I can't. I'll pass that over to someone else. But I just wanted to say very quickly, really good point on payment for ecosystem services. And actually, ISIMOD is also working on natural capital accounting, especially in Bhutan and Nepal. So I think there's a good conversation to be had there. It's obviously early days. We've been thinking about it for 20 years, so it's very hard to enable. But I think that's a critical part. So just wanted to echo that point. Thank you.
So I'd say that water conservation is an intrinsic pillar of this project, of this initiative. I mean, you can't have ecosystem restoration without working on water. And whether it is built in as a part, consciously as a part of design, or whether it is a subconscious inclusion, or it is a consequence of the implementation. So it's all having sense there. Capture those numbers so that even those numbers can be communicated as far as impact is concerned. And possibly, Kashif, you're already doing it.
Alka has mentioned that ecosystem services valuation, and we have recently evaluated how much the ecosystem services value. It is 1.53 lakh crore per year. P of it is only at present 3.4%, and Chhattisgarh Forest Department has requested us for the contribution of the use value, and you are very right that there is a need to evaluate the ecosystem services. So only the economic aspect of the society at large, that only then the educate financial allocations for the maintenance of those ecosystem will be there. So with these words, I request Mr. Prashant Rajgopal, DIG Forest, to conclude the session.
Thank you. And for I think there was one question that was unanswered, largely on the on the what we said on conservation and infrastructure also. So as you can see, India is now in that threshold where we are investing significantly in infrastructure, and particularly Northeast being one of those areas with prime focus on infrastructure. So the question is the observation is very valid, that there has to be that balance, and that is what we are primarily trying to achieve, because incidentally, the same ministry is the one that gives a lot of clearances for most of these infrastructure projects in those areas. And there's also the conservation aspect, which is handled by the same ministry, so it's all in the same place. But yeah, so that helps also, so that you're able to understand what's happening, in the next division or the next section that's handling that. And now that we've come to sort of, I've been asked to conclude this, for a moment we all felt like probably the Indian cricket captain with all hands raised, at a press conference. So, but it was quite lively, and to see the kind of interaction that happens and the kind of questions that are put to you. And I'm glad for all of the, particularly starting with Virginia, then Emma, everybody putting in perspectives, many of them also representing their governments, or not technically their governments, but the country that they come from, the perspectives that are held there, and their outlook on this part of the world and how it, so the finances are also on a global scale. How do we see this part of the world? What is the focus? Like we said, there's a lot of push happening. Amazon, anybody would know, but then if you would ask somebody about what are we talking about, Eastern Himalayas, not many would really be, So even when we, the division that I work in is also, in fact, my IG is not here, but she's the national focal point for the UNC summit, so for the India representative. Most of those summits, when you go and tell them from India, it's largely, some parts of it, but not, they don't even know how diverse this country is. So the kind of solutions that we're looking for are also equally, sort of diverse. Like we had a gentleman say about my food is your God, that concept. So it's all there. So in this place, if you can sort of crack here, then you can do that anywhere, in any part of the world, is generally the takeaway that we're looking. But sadly, we're still at that point where we are trying to make little inroads into this. All of us here, and in that, I work on the government side of it, but then everybody here is on the other side of things, but we're still trying, the objective is the same. And probably this is the only sort of field or, of work where all other considerations are kept aside, because the problem is common for everybody. It could be regional boundaries, or geopolitical issues, all go out of the window till you sort this out. This is eventually that we need to sort of bind. This is, binds us by default. We have no other options, right? So in that sense, I think I would now not keep you waiting, waiting or something like that. So thank you for this. And it was an extremely, for me, it's a personal takeaway session, a lot of takeaways, a lot of things that I need to think things that I put up in a note or something going up ahead, there'll be a lot of more perspectives that I would now be able to sort of push into this system. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
That was indeed an engaging and insightful discussion. I extend my sincere thanks to all our distinguished panelists for sharing their perspectives. Let's have a huge round of applause for the wonderful session that we just had. And I now request Dr. Sharma to felicitate our speakers, starting with, let's felicitate Mr. Prashant Rajgopal. Miss Emma Wright. Miss Virginia Gorsevsky, Miss Saloni Goel, Mr. Sandeep Roy Chaudhary, Mr. Kundan Banwal, Mr. Saurav Malhotra, Dr. Kashif Saad. I now request our chair, Mr. Prashant Rajgopal, to felicitate Dr. Sharma. May I now request all the speakers to come in front for a group photograph, including Mr. Malhotra and Dr. Shah, please. May I request everyone to join the conversation online using our official hashtag WSDS 2026 and act forward and help us to amplify the message of this summit. I request everyone to proceed ahead at Raja Garden for tea and snacks.